This is gonna be a pretty hard video to film because Mr. Pibb's tank is right by a door with giant windows on it, so there's gonna be a lot of glare, and on top of that, he's a killifish, so he's gonna be all over the place while I'm filming. And I just want to talk a little bit about Mr. Pibb, where he came from, and all that other good stuff. Some of you might recognize this tank. It is my 5.5 tank that used to be planted. I originally had 4 neon tetras in here, and I kicked them out and I put them in the 29-gallon tank. I did take out all of the plants that were originally in here. There was an Amazon sword, a couple of dwarf sage plants in here, the odd and end Apongigeton bulbs, and I did have this lovely little crypt here. It was a lot smaller than it was before. We can focus on here. But since it has sprouted a little bit, I'm noticing the ram's horn snails that are everywhere in this tank are starting to nibble on it. The only occupants in this lovely little tank are 2 endlers. There's one right here. And of course Mr. Pibb, who is my green male Gardneri killifish. And as you guys know, I used to work for a chain pet store, and they had a lot of fish tanks. I was able to order a lot of different fish that you don't see in the hobby. And unfortunately, before I moved, I had to get rid of a lot of them, especially my plecos. And I did order this killifish. He came in a pair, or a trio, and I ordered, I think, 6 of them. But only he showed up. And I knew that ordering a bunch of them would be best, because a lot of times when the killifish come in, they look like this. If you can't tell, he has a bent spine. It's absolutely not suitable for breeding purposes, but I wasn't going to let him sit at the pet store just because he's a little deformed. And like I said, I ordered 6, but only he came out, so yeah. So in my opinion, just because from my experience with keeping him, he is the first killifish I've ever had. I don't think he is suitable for any type of community living. I was planning on putting all 6 killifish into a 10-gallon tank and taking out like a couple of pairs or whatever. They would have their own tanks, but for sure I would not put a killifish in a small community tank. So he has eaten probably half of the guppies that were in here. He's eaten the rummy nose tetras that I had in here. I originally had 6. Before I moved them to the 29-gallon tank, I only had, I think, 2 or 3 left. So he's a feisty little guy. And I also recently started doing a new type of water change method for him. I don't have a python or any means of hooking up a hose to the tanks, and as you guys know, I keep small tanks. The biggest tanks that I have are my 20 long over there, and of course the 29-gallon tank that's down there closer to the floor. So I have to do what we call the bucket method, and the problem with that is my 3-gallon buckets get pretty heavy, and not only that, it gets a pain in the behind to fill and refill them. So I started using a little pitcher and storing some of my water in like little jugs like these. I did this in my old house. If you go back to some of my older videos, you'll see me using these little punch containers, and I'll put medicated water in them and let them sit for a couple of days. And that's how I've been changing his water. I believe killifish can go from acidic water to basically 8.0. So they're not too finicky about their water. But I have noticed that since I've made the move, he was pretty sluggish. So I started changing his water more often. Like I said, this is just a 5.5. I don't fill it all the way to the top because killifish are jumpers. So what I've been doing is taking out about a gallon and replacing that gallon every 3 days, and he's become a lot more active since then. You can see the horde of snails up there. So that's basically it on Mr. Pibb. He's just a regular green gardener eye killifish. I hope to one day get a couple more better quality ones and maybe get them breeding one day, but for now I just have one. And he is absolutely gorgeous. Even though he has that bent spine, I still think he's pretty cool.